It was on an ordinary Monday that my life was turned upside down. Detective Benjamin Carter, 32, freshly promoted in DC's Homicide Division. There I was, staring at my reflection in the station's bathroom mirror, adjusting my tie for the 10th time that morning. My brown eyes betrayed the nervousness I was trying to hide. After years spent on the police force in a small town, I'd finally managed to get transferred to Washington, D.C. My family still questioned my decision to leave our quiet inland town, especially my sister Madison, who kept insisting I was running away from a stable relationship with the local sheriff's daughter. Little did they know the real reason was different. I needed a fresh start, a place where I could truly be myself, away from the judgmental eyes of a small town. What I didn't know was that this new beginning would come in a completely unexpected way. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get access to more stories like this. The Homicide Division buzzed with the typical intensity of a capital's precinct. Amid stacks of files and the strong aroma of coffee, I monitored our ongoing investigations. My desk, strategically placed with a view over the whole department, was my observation post. Mornings kicked off with tactical meetings, followed by visits to crime scenes and interrogations. The constant ringing of phones and police radios blended with tense conversations about new cases. Amid reports and evidence, I found comfort in that methodical routine, where every detail could be the key to cracking a case. The chatter in the department started early that morning. The new chief was arriving, and the tension was palpable in the air. I'd heard stories about Christopher Anderson, 38, with a stellar career in Chicago and a reputation for turning troubled departments into elite units. I was focused on a report when the meeting room door opened. The silence was immediate. Anderson entered with a presence that commanded natural respect. Tall, broad-shouldered, with streaks of gray at his temples that only amplified his authority. His green eyes swept the room, taking in every face. When our eyes met, I felt something different. It was like time slowed down for a second. He held my gaze a moment longer than necessary before moving on to inspect the room. "Guys, I'm Christopher Anderson. I'm not a fan of long speeches, so I'll cut to the chase. I'm here to take this department to its top potential. Some of you are going to have to step out of your comfort zones. Others will discover abilities they never knew they had." During the individual team introductions, I noticed how he handled each interaction in his own unique way. With some, he was more forceful, with others more relaxed. When it was my turn, his approach caught me off guard. "Detective Carter, I read about your serial murder case in Virginia. Impressive deduction work." His voice had a softer, almost intimate tone that contrasted with his formal stance. "I'm expecting great things from you." I tried to keep a professional response, but I could feel my face heating up. "Thank you, sir. I'll do my best." The rest of the day was a whirlwind. Anderson immediately began implementing changes, reorganizing teams, and redistributing cases. His efficiency was admirable, but there was something else about him that intrigued me. The way he processed information, made decisions, led. It was fascinating to watch him work. At the end of the day, as I was tidying up my desk, I realized I was already looking forward to tomorrow. For the first time since getting to DC, I felt I'd found a purpose greater than just running away from my past. What I didn't know was that this was only the beginning of a much deeper transformation. The following weeks brought a new dynamic to the department. Anderson had a knack for bringing out the best in every detective, and I was no exception. Our first case together involved a string of robberies that escalated into homicides. "Carter, I need your take on this one," he called me one night, spreading photos from the crime scenes all across his desk. While everyone else had already left, we stayed there, deep in theories and possibilities. His analytical skills perfectly complemented my attention to details in an almost uncanny way. Work lunches became a regular thing. Sometimes it was just a quick sandwich as we discussed evidence. Other times we'd dive into longer talks about investigative techniques. Anderson had fascinating stories from his days in Chicago, and I found myself completely absorbed in every word. "You know, Benjamin," he said one day, using my first name for the first time, "you have a unique way of connecting dots that others wouldn't even notice." The compliment came with that penetrating look I was beginning to recognize all too well. We developed a silent understanding. A glance during an interrogation was all it took for us to know each other's next move. Our case-solving rate skyrocketed, and it caught the attention of everyone in the department. On one particularly challenging case, we spent 3 nights straight combing through evidence. On the third night, exhausted, we shared a moment of vulnerability. "Sometimes I wonder if all this dedication is even worth it," he admitted, massaging his temples. "It is when we make a real difference," I replied. pouring more coffee for both of us. His tired smile sent a strange feeling through my chest. It was more than just professional admiration, and that realization started to scare me. More and more, I caught myself thinking about him outside of work, replaying our moments together, craving more time in his company. As our closeness grew, my mind turned into a battlefield. Every interaction with Anderson was followed by hours of self-questioning. As a detective, I was trained to keep control, but this was beyond me. The looks from colleagues began to weigh on me, the whispers in the hallways, the sudden pauses in conversation when I entered a room. Veteran Johnson once commented, "You and the chief seem to be spending a lot of time together, huh, Carter?" At home, calls from my family became more frequent. My sister Madison kept insisting on introducing me to a lovely friend. My father, always straightforward, questioned when I was going to settle down. But the worst conflict was internal. As a law enforcement professional, I'd always held ethics in the highest regard. A relationship with my direct superior could jeopardize years of hard work. Plus, I didn't even know if Anderson felt the same. Maybe I was misreading all the signs, seeing something that wasn't there beyond professional respect. One complex case kept us in the office well past midnight. The department was deserted. Only the distant sound of the cleaning lady in the corridor broke the silence. Anderson had loosened his tie, the top few buttons of his shirt undone, revealing his neck. The whiskey he kept in his drawer helped keep the night's chill at bay. "This case is really consuming us," he said, pouring another shot for both of us. His fingers brushed mine as he handed me the glass, sending an electric jolt down my spine. "There's something we're missing," I replied, forcing myself to focus on the photos spread across the desk. His cologne, mixed with the smell of whiskey, made it hard to concentrate. Anderson got up and walked over to the window. The city lights painted his silhouette in a mesmerizing way. "Sometimes, Benjamin, the answer is right in front of us, but we're too scared to see it." His tone made me lift my gaze. He wasn't talking about the case anymore, and we both knew it. My heart raced as he turned toward me, his green eyes fixed on me with an intensity I'd never seen before. "I've been watching how you act when it's just the two of us," he continued, stepping closer. "How your breathing changes, how your eyes follow me." I swallowed hard, unable to confirm or deny. Years of investigative training hadn't prepared me for this moment. Anderson stopped just inches away, his warmth radiating through the small space between us. "Tell me if I'm wrong." His voice was now almost a whisper. "Tell me if I'm misinterpreting the signs." My hands trembled slightly as I set the glass down on the desk. "I can't," I admitted, my voice raspier than usual. "It wouldn't be the truth." The air between us was charged with electricity. Anderson raised his hand, his fingers softly tracing my jawline. The touch sent shivers all over my body. I closed my eyes, unconsciously leaning into his touch. "This could complicate everything," I murmured, even though I knew we'd already crossed the point of no return. "Some complications are worth it," he replied, his other hand finding my waist. Our first kiss was hesitant and experimental at first, but when he pulled me closer, all hesitation vanished. The kiss deepened, years of repressed tension exploding into a moment of pure passion. His hands explored my back while mine tangled in his hair. The taste of whiskey on his tongue, the heat of his body pressed against mine. It was a storm of sensations that threatened to consume me completely. When we finally broke apart, panting, I realized there was no going back. That moment would change everything. Our professional relationship, our personal lives, the whole balance we had built up until then. Anderson rested his forehead against mine, his eyes closed, his breathing still uneven. "This complicates everything," he repeated my words with a soft smile. "Some complications are worth it," I returned, making him laugh softly. The office suddenly felt too small for the intensity of the moment. Anderson led me to his desk, knocking a few files over in the process. Neither of us cared about the papers scattered on the floor. His strong hands roamed over my body above my clothes, each touch leaving a trail of fire on my skin. The knot of my tie easily came undone under his skilled fingers. The buttons on my shirt gave way one by one, revealing more skin for his lips to explore. "You have no idea how long I've waited for this," he murmured against my neck, his voice a little deeper than usual, sending shivers down my spine. My hands trembled slightly as I unbuttoned his shirt, revealing his toned torso. The contrast between the cold desk and the heat of his body left me breathless. His firm hands on my waist kept me in place while his lips traced a fiery path across my chest. Every kiss, every touch seemed more intense than the one before. "Chris." His name slipped from my lips like a prayer when he pressed his body against mine. The friction between us was electrifying. our increasingly heavy breaths filling the quiet office. His hands slid down my back, exploring every inch of exposed skin. The desire in his green eyes completely consumed me. There were no more barriers between us, just skin on skin, heat meeting heat. The outside world ceased to exist. It was just the two of us, lost in a primitive dance of desire and discovery. Every movement, every quiet moan, every touch brought us closer to ecstasy. Anderson knew exactly how to touch me, how to make me lose control. His hands and lips found sensitive spots I didn't even know existed. My fingers dug into his shoulders, searching for grounding as waves of pleasure coursed through my body. "Look at me," he commanded softly, his voice rough with desire. When our eyes met, the connection between us went beyond the physical. It was as if our souls touched through that look. Our climax hit us like a storm, intense and overwhelming. For a moment, time froze. There was only the feeling of completeness, the perfect union of two beings. Afterward, as our breathing slowly normalized, we stayed wrapped in each other's arms. His fingers traced gentle patterns down my back, and I could feel his heart pounding against my chest. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly, tucking a stray lock of hair away from my face with a tenderness that contrasted sharply with the intensity of the moments before. "Better than okay," I replied, a lazy smile forming on my lips. The weight of his body on mine made me feel safe, protected. Gradually, reality began to seep back in. The distant sound of traffic outside, the hum of the air conditioner, the scattered papers on the floor. But none of it mattered. In that moment, we were just two men who had finally found something in each other they didn't even know they were looking for. The first rays of sunlight started filtering through the office window as we finally regained our composure. While I adjusted my tie, I noticed Anderson gathering up the files from the floor. The familiarity of his movements now held a new meaning. "We need to talk about this," he said, his voice still husky. There was no regret in his tone, only a genuine concern that mirrored my own thoughts. "I know," I replied, sitting down in the chair across from his desk. The space that had often been the setting for our professional discussions now held much more intimate memories. "This changes everything, Benjamin," he began, running a hand through his still disheveled hair. "Not just between us, but for the whole department. We need to be careful. The reality of what we'd done was starting to weigh on us. The professional consequences, the looks from our colleagues, the rumors that were sure to start. My investigative mind was already mapping out every possible scenario. We could keep it a secret," I suggested, more to myself than to him. "No one needs to know." Anderson moved closer, sitting on the edge of the desk near me. "We could," he agreed. "But is that really what you want? To hide away, pretending there's nothing between us?" His question struck something deep inside me. Wasn't that exactly what I'd done my whole life? Hiding who I really was? Pretending to be someone else to please others? "No," I finally said. "I don't want to hide anymore." A gentle smile appeared on his lips. "Neither do I. But we have to be smart about this. I'm going to request your transfer to another unit tomorrow." "What?" The surprise was written all over my face. "It's the only way to do this right, Benjamin. You're an excellent detective. Any unit would be lucky to have you. And this way, we can explore this without jeopardizing our professional integrity." His logic was impeccable, as always. It was a solution that would let us keep both our relationship and our careers intact. "And what about the others?" I asked, thinking about my colleagues, my family. "We'll deal with that when the time comes," he replied, his hand finding mine. Step by step, the touch of his thumb on my palm was comforting, anchoring me in the present while my mind wandered through the uncertain future ahead. "It won't be easy," I warned him, though I knew he was already aware of that. "The best things in life rarely are," he replied with a smile that made my heart race all over again. The sound of footsteps in the corridor made us instinctively pull away. It was time to go back to being Chief Anderson and Detective Carter, at least for now. As we organized the office for another day of work, I realized that something fundamental had changed inside me. The fear that always accompanied me was replaced by a calm determination. For the first time, I was ready to face whatever consequences came, because I had finally found someone worth the risk. 2 weeks passed since that night in the office. My transfer to the Special Crimes Unit was practically finalized. Anderson and I maintained an impeccable professional distance during that time, even though our occasional glances said so much more than words. On my last day in homicide, he called me into his office. The afternoon sun streamed in through the window, casting long shadows on the carpet. I closed the door behind me, feeling the weight of the moment. "Your paperwork is ready," he said, handing me a folder. On Monday, report to Captain Reynolds. I nodded, flipping through the documents without really reading them. The silence between us was heavy with unspoken words. I've got something for you, he continued, opening a drawer in his desk. He pulled out a small object wrapped in plain paper. A farewell gift. I unwrapped it carefully, revealing an old pocket watch, the kind that gets passed down through generations. Chris, it belonged to my father, he explained softly. He gave it to me when I became a detective. He said that a good investigator has to know that timing is everything in life. I didn't miss the significance. It wasn't just a gift, it was a promise. I can't accept it, I protested weakly, even though my fingers already caressed the smooth surface of the watch. You can, and you will, he insisted, getting up and circling the desk. Because that means you'll have to see me outside of work to return it. I smiled, understanding the game. And when would that be? How about tonight? I know a discreet spot in Georgetown. The proposal lingered in the air between us. It was more than just dinner. It was our first real step as a couple, outside the confines of the station. Are you sure you want to do this? I asked, giving him one last chance to back out. Once people start noticing us together, Benjamin, he interrupted, his hand caressing my face softly. I've spent too long living by others' expectations. I don't want that anymore. His determination was infectious. All the fears and doubts I had about stepping into a relationship began to vanish. 8 o'clock? I suggested, tucking the watch into my pocket. 8 o'clock, he confirmed with a smile. When I left his office for the last time as his subordinate, I felt a mix of melancholy and anticipation. One chapter was closing, but something much bigger was just beginning. I walked past my desk, now empty except for a small box containing my personal belongings. Johnson, the veteran who always had a comment for everything, came over. I'm gonna miss you around here, Carter, he said, extending his hand. Take care. His firm handshake and understanding look made me realize that maybe not all my colleagues were as judgmental as I'd feared. I left the station with the weight of the watch in my pocket, a constant reminder that some changes, although scary, are necessary to find true happiness. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get access to more stories like this. Today, 6 months later, as I look at the pocket watch on my desk in the Special Crimes Unit, I can't help but smile at how life works in such unexpected ways. Chris and I have found our rhythm, quietly balancing our personal and professional lives. Thursday dinners in Georgetown have become our tradition. Sometimes we simply reminisce about old cases, and other times we plan our future. My family is still adjusting to the idea, but Madison has surprisingly become our biggest supporter. At work, my case-solving rate has never been better. Maybe it's because I'm finally being true to myself, or maybe because I have someone special to impress with my deductions during our dinners. The hallway whispers have faded with time. People have this interesting ability to get used to anything, as long as you maintain your integrity and professionalism. And we did. Chris still keeps that bottle of whiskey in his drawer, but now it's for home celebrations, no longer for solitary office nights. I've learned that some rules are meant to be broken, while others, like being true to yourself, are sacred. For those still struggling with their own truths, afraid of the consequences of being who they really are, sometimes the biggest case we need to solve is the mystery of our own happiness. And as any good detective knows, the evidence always points to the truth. If this story touched you in any way, share it. Hit like and subscribe to the channel for more stories about courage, love, and authenticity. Because in the end, we're all detectives in our own lives, searching for clues that lead us to true happiness. And to Chris, if you're watching this, that watch still keeps perfect time, but it's our moments together that truly matter. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get access to more stories like this.